there are millions and millions and millions of homes right now that are under so much stress, with parents, both parents working. A lot of the cost, considering that 44% of people's income goes to their home, that cost is meaning that mothers who were traditionally at home are no longer. And so children are home a lot by themselves. There's a franticness when dinner happens, when there used to be a really important time for the family to sit down and have dinner. Soccer games have taken over. The core neighborhoods aren't core neighborhoods anymore. We have soccer games who are neighborhoods. So that people go to these games, they don't really interact with each other very much there. It's a place, though, that there is some level of community. There isn't the kind of community you would find in a village community or in a city. It's a very, very different. It's a suburban kind of community. That is a tragedy, because it's a very limited way of dealing with something that used to be you'd go to your local store and the hardware store was down the street, or your soda machine was down. You'd have a little place people would have sundaes and they'd be down the street. Or your library would be there, and your kids would go to the library after school, and they'd come home, and there'd be brownies, and mom would have dinner on the table. All of those simple family things that we used to do are gone, and in exchange for tremendous amounts of time in cars, on tremendous amounts of highways, in very complex housing, spread very far apart, without any villages or core sacred cores. So children naturally. The drug use in the country is way up. People are unhappy. And I would suggest that home is the reason why. The way we have designed and built housing, the way people have chosen to live in housing is one of the critical problems we have. One of the big, besides the divorce situation, which means people have to have multiple housing, is this corporate moving. When people take that extra money, they could never possibly expense the cost emotionally to a family of moving for a corporate move. The trauma to move is so great that you do that, you've completely changed your entire network of connection in the neighborhood that you're in. So, and when that happens, one of the things that happened with building a few years ago, Toll Brothers and these giant companies that buy all of our beautiful land and then build these very large depreciating monsters have when they did these, they designed them for people who were moving so they would look really fancy, and they would be able to flip them. And well, they flipped them, and of course now they're depreciating, which is a problem because they weren't built that well to start with. So, and they are all spread out on these gigantic road systems, and as we know now, people can't afford them. They're too expensive. They're much too big. They're much too spread out, and their big attempt now is to, dense, even bigger, gigantic houses on small pieces of land. They have that figured out, but they haven't realized that they're building still cheap houses on small pieces of land. They need to build smaller, better houses. So the homeowner isn't forced to pay for these giant houses. Size sells, and size is sold for years and years and years. And people know that. And so they're afraid if they do something smaller and better, if they ever needed to sell, they couldn't. So if we don't take it, if women don't get that we're in charge of what we buy, and what we really want is something we can afford, something we love to be in, something we can spend time with our family in, something we can invite friends into, and we can do that by having smaller homes that are closer together in existing infrastructure, that's a good place to start in an industry that's completely lost its way. As far as designing a building, that turns into a sort of another topic and almost needs to be handled individually. But from a master plan standpoint, if the consumer gets that, then we take hold of the industry ourselves, because we're already in charge of it. We're the ones who already are deciding what's bought and what's sold. So if we decide we're not going to buy those anymore, it's a good plan. And for the buildings that are there, we really need to increase density in these places and try to create sacred cores where people have a place to go where there's a sense of community, and take back a culture that has the kind of support we need as individuals.